Welcome to Game Reads. I'm your host, Sean Callahan. I'm here today with a man that needs no introduction, Blaise Corvin. Hey, Blaise, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's nice to be here. I'm really happy you invited me.
Yeah, man, awesome to talk to you. You're a big name in Gamelit these days, and for good reason. How many books do you have right now?
There's 5 out right now.
And that is the Ludus series, the Delvers LLC series with 3 books, and a fourth coming?
Yes, so the 4th will be coming out either late this year or early next year. I need to write the rest of the Nora Hazard series first, which will tie into that.
The Nora Hazard series. That's another series in the Ludus world, correct?
Correct. So that's kind of a spin-off, but it also is going to directly tie into the series. And I did that so that I can do some additional world building without bogging down kind of the larger Delvers LLC series. So it will be optional for readers to pick up, but I really think that fans of the series will enjoy it, and they have been so far. So I think I've accomplished that goal.
Yeah, I read it. I loved it. I think everybody should pick it up. It's
Thank
got a
you.
great, strong female protagonist. She kicks ass. I love it. And you're planning on expanding that. Did you say that?
So Nora, I'm not expanding the Nora series, but the Nora series expands the greater universe, in I think some more personal ways. The Delvers LLC series, just as a quick recap for people that might not be familiar with it, is about 2 guys from Earth that are transported to a fantasy world and have to learn magic and become adventurers. Now, it's really high octane. There's a lot of stuff going on, but there are also kind of political interludes and some traveling. Basically, it's a lot of really exciting stuff for readers, but doesn't give me a lot of opportunity to tell the story from maybe a native's perspective. And that's what Nora does. It just kind of builds the culture out a little bit. It lets people understand what the world looks like from a Luden's perspective, which I think makes reading Delvers LLC a much richer experience.
And Ludus is a really unique environment. I didn't really mean to get into that series today because we're talking about one of my favorites. We're talking about Secrets of the Old Ones today, but no spoiler alerts. We'll wait on that. But Ludus just is. When I first read that Delvers LLC 1, man, I was like, this is really freaking cool because it's not like a Portal fan. Well, it is kind of a Portal fantasy, but it is a game as well, right?
Yeah, so basically it is Portal fantasy in that the characters are transported to another world, but the other world is run by a being that has tailored it to match ancient games of an alien civilization that is somewhat like our current role-playing game. So the gamer of the 2 characters I wrote immediately kind of understands the basic rules that underlie the rest of the world.
So the god what's his name?
Dolos.
Dolos. He's got some fancy pants attire that going on there though, doesn't he?
Yeah, all the colors of the rainbow.
I love that. He's kind of an ass, I gotta say.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. I'm being generous, but no, I mean the way that he runs that world as a game world really is a test bed, right?
Correct.
I love that. Okay, the 2 protagonists in that series, their names are
Henry and Jason.
Henry and Jason, the 2 Earthlings that are transported there. They come with some skills. They're not these noobs that get dropped into this new world. One's a fencing person, one has martial arts, correct?
So they're actually both into HEMA, which stands for Historical European Martial Arts. And that is a group of folks who study the old treatises from like the 1700s, 1600s, 1500s on how to use long swords, side swords, the weapons of the day. And those treatises were how the actual experts, like the really deadly dudes, learned from the masters. It is a how-to guide on how to be lethal with those weapons. And most people who are in the HEMA are also into other martial arts as well, and Henry and Jason are. In fact, that's how they met each other. I haven't gotten into that in the series, but they met each other through HEMA.
Oh, that's really cool. And it comes out because they use those skills instead of, the typical progression of someone being in a game and gaining a skill by using it and learning it, starting off as a noob. These guys have skills coming in, which I really enjoyed that. And that kind of makes sense being that it is a Portal fantasy. Having read those books and loved them, and also having read Secret of the Old Ones, and there's some damn good fighting and sword play in that one. Tells me that you might know a little bit about what you're talking about. So, what's that?
Just a little. I'm being humble. I'm a freaking expert. Yeah. So.
You were in the Army, correct?
Correct.
And you served 8 years. Is that correct?
Yes. So I was active for about 4, and then I served 4 years in the reserves.
Thank you for your service. I really appreciate that. And how do you think that your military service, aided you in your writing?
A bunch of different ways. For one, I really understand what camaraderie is like among a group of people that have experienced a lot of really hairy, messed up stuff. I also understand what it's like to really know that your life is out of your control. Like whether you live or die has nothing to do with anything you could possibly do. And that sort of fatalistic attitude is something that's really hard, I think, to write unless you've actually felt it before. I don't think it's coincidence that most historical or military sci-fi writers are prior military. I don't think that that's a coincidence.
I guess that segues into us addressing the obvious, which is that you are wearing mail armor, chainmail armor.
Yeah. So this isn't historically correct. This is aluminum because I don't feel like wearing the heavy stuff around the house. But yeah, I thought to myself, what's the geekiest thing I can wear on my very first visit to this new podcast? And so I went with a Dragon Ball Z t-shirt. I don't know if you can see my Turtle Master mark, and some chainmail. This is aluminum, but it actually is peened. It's got the riveted construction that the real stuff had. That's something a lot of people don't know. Real mail back in the day was not butted construction like you can get for cheap on eBay. It was actually flattened on both ends of the link, and there was a little piece of metal driven through, and then it was peened on both sides. That makes the link extremely strong, and that's why it could stand up to 1,000-pound crossbow bolts and things of that nature.
Well, speaking of the crossbow, I have this little sucker. This is my tribute to. This is what I mess around with in the yard. It's pretty strong, man. It fires pretty fast and hard. I love it.
That's cool. The only thing I've got in my office that's like that. So this is my Hex Nut Slingshot Crossbow.
What the heck is that thing?
It shoots hex nuts.
Oh my God.
That's the magazine. This thing is strong enough to put a hex nut through most wooden fences.
Wow. Did you make that?
No, I actually commissioned this years ago. I'm not talented enough to make something like this, but there is a crossbow YouTuber named Jorg Sprave who's out of Germany, and he creates just all sorts of awesome slingshots. And he made something like this. So this particular one is inspired by his design, but nothing like this exists like it in the world.
Yeah, I have never seen anything like that. That is the craziest thing I think I've seen ever.
Yeah, this is just laying around my house. I've got it. I have my Rocket Raccoon backpack holding on to it back there. You can't see it in my office, but yeah.
Well, I know you're a huge knife fan. So, what kind of host would I be if I didn't try to impress you with my knife prowess and admit that I'm just such a knife newbie? So, let's go through a couple things here. I have this. I didn't buy this. I swear, Blaise, I did not buy this because you were coming on. But I have.
This is Skeletool.
Yes.
Yes.
You said this is one of you think everyone should own one of these, right?
Absolutely. That's probably the best light, is the best multi-tool that somebody is likely to actually carry, in my opinion, in the world.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's obviously you can got all kinds of gadgets. It's like a Swiss Army knife, except in the skeleton form, and made by Leatherman, which is a great company, of course. But this thing is absolutely something you can shove in your pocket, and you could drop this in the mud and it would work. It's kind of like the AK of knives, of multi-tools, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Gerber and Leatherman kind of pioneered the multi-tool space, and now everybody's got them. I mean, even cosplayers use multi-tools when they're doing crafting. They're very, very handy to have around.
Titanium Camillus? Familiar?
I'm not really that familiar with it. It's not high-end enough for me.
Oh, you bastard. All right, damn it. I thought I had you there. All right, let's see. Let's see if I can still. I got to impress. I mean, I got you with a Skeletool. You probably never thought I would have one, but
the cool thing about having a neat writing office is I can be completely put on the spot and still have access to weapons. So this is an antique. I believe this was manufactured in 1873. This is a Chespeau bayonet. So this was a bayonet for the very first mass-produced cartridge-fired rifle called the French Chespeau. And this is a really cool Yatagan style bayonet, which is, kind of cool because it can be used as a short sword. So you can imagine you have this really, really long black powder rifle with this thing stuck on. It's like 7 feet long. So kind of a cool piece of history there. And then we also have a Filipino Bolo.
Cool.
Yeah, this is really cool. I've cut coconuts open with this thing. This thing's legit. I really like that. It's really very interesting because it's similar in shape to a kukri, and it really kind of functions about the same.
I have a kukri upstairs, and it looks very similar to that.
Last but not least, this is a heavily customized Angus trim sword. So I got this as an arming sword, and this was actually an Angus trim sword. So Gus made the blade. I have to be very careful with this because it's extremely sharp. So Gus made this blade, and I had some Albion company furniture on it. It was in an arming sword configuration before. I put this complex El Cid hilt on it. So now it is more of like a transitional sword, almost like a Walloon.
Right.
And it's very interesting because it's Gus does some amazing work, and this is an extremely rigid blade despite being so light and thin. I've only ever seen this quality of sword blade in like Albions and antiques. So this is probably my favorite sword in my entire collection.
Wow, that is nice.
Why I keep it in my office.
I love the hilt on that. That thing is awesome.
Yeah, it's just got this really beautiful, complex hilt that I really like because I'm lazy, and if I were ever going to grab my sword should the zombies attack, I don't want to have to wear gauntlets because they're heavy and stinky and they make your hands sweat.
Right. Of killing things and zombies, you said one of the weirdest, coolest talents you have was that you fought Leroy Jenkins on the Laughing Skull server?
Yes. So in Vanilla WoW, I played on Laughing Skull server, and Pals for Life, which was the guild that Leroy Jenkins was in when that little short came out, was a kill on sight for all the Horde. And I was on Horde side. So we had epic battles with Pals for Life. And I have to give them props because if you saw a P4L player and attack them, like within 5 minutes, they'd have 10 or 20 guildies just destroying you. And they were really, really well geared too. So you almost had to like play guerrilla tactics against P4L. I was able to kill Leroy by myself, but man, he had some good gear. And it was only because I was able to kind of sneak up on him and he wasn't able to run away that well, which if you ever played WoW, you know how easy it is for a Pally to run away. So I'm very proud of that.
Nice. Nice. I don't think many people can say that they killed Leroy Jenkins. I mean,
Probably not.
one of the most interesting things, I think, beyond the military stuff and the knives and the swords, one of the most interesting things about you as a person, I think, is that you have some very unique tastes in critters. What is it about the mantis shrimp stuff that gets you going?
Mainly I think the mantis shrimp is interesting because there's no other animal in the world, no other vertebrate or invertebrate that has quite the same arsenal that the mantis shrimp does. It's got way more complex eyes than we do. Its reaction time is just insane. I've had them in my aquarium and I've seen what great predators they are. I always see reports that the smasher type mantis shrimp. There's two types of mantis shrimps. There's spears and smashers. And the smashers' arms are hinged like this, and they come out like this. And I've seen lots of literature saying that they hit with the same impact as a 22 caliber bullet, and I believe it. Yes, I believe it. Mm-hmm. Little mantis shrimp. They get about this big, max. Yeah, they hit hard. Oh man, they hit hard. I've seen videos of a mantis shrimp facing off against an octopus, and that's crazy.
Oh man, I am gonna have to YouTube that after we're
The
done.
mutual respect of these two apex predators is really interesting to watch.
And you had those in your aquarium in your house?
Yes. So what happens when you have a saltwater aquarium is you buy live rock. They call it live rock because you can't just buy any rock and put it in your aquarium. Well, you can and turn it into live rock, but when you're setting one up, you buy like coral rock. It has all sorts of organisms all over it, and that kind of starts your tank. So what happens is people get live rock from the ocean and then they sell it in the aquarium trade for $10 or $20 per pound or whatever, which can add up really fast. What happens is you can get a shipment of live rock in that has mantis shrimps in it because this is how strong they are. They pound a hole directly into solid rock to make a burrow sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you don't know you have it until you have your tank set up and suddenly all your critters start dying and you're like, what? Or they're not there anymore. You're like, what is going on? The mantis shrimp ate them all. They can destroy. They'll kill anything in your tank. Mantis shrimp are insane. And then if you're looking for a mantis shrimp, like a peacock mantis shrimp, or one of the more colorful, pretty ones, they're a little expensive, and you also usually put them in a tank by themselves because once again they'll destroy anything. It's almost like having a snowflake moray eel. You can't have them in the tank with like damselfish and things like that, or else they'll eat them.
That is crazy.
Yet another one of my strange, another one of my hobbies where I know a bunch of random useless information.
And you also, did you have I guess I would call it a terrarium with tarantulas?
Yes. So I was into tarantulas for about a year and a half. And one time I think I had 30 of them. I never got. Yeah, it's really easy when you collect tarantulas because they don't need a lot of space. You only need I would go to like the Container Store and I'd buy a little cube thing and turn it into a tarantula habitat. They don't. In fact, some tarantulas can be stressed out if you give them too much room, or else they'll take all that space and turn a very small portion of it into their home.
Really?
So you can, 30 tarantulas is not that much. I could probably fit 30 tarantula habitats on my desk right now.
And do you put them in the same habitat? I mean,
no, that would be bad. No,
that would be like
they both get their own little home. So think like what's a good example? I mean, here's my book, Secret of the Old Ones. So imagine a little enclosure about this size on all four sides with a lid, and that would be enough for even some of the larger avix, which is a genus of tree spiders out of South America.
I do not want that. Sorry.
Some of them are really beautiful. But you also, people who are into tarantulas kind of know their limits, or at least the smart ones do. And there's some tarantulas that are very easy to keep. Like, for instance, a beginner tarantula will be a rose hair Chilean, is what they're usually called in pet stores, and they're very chill. There are very few rose hairs that are ever defensive. And on top of that, they're not very venomous. So if you get bit by one, it's not going to mess you up. But some tarantulas, like an orange bamboon spider, which is usually called an OBT in the trade for orange bitey thing, or orange baboon tarantula, they're always pissy, and they'll threat posture and get on their hind legs and tell you to get away. They're very defensive. They'll move their fangs like this and stridulate, which is hissing. Yeah, they're kind of scary. You don't want to mess with them. They will bite you.
And that people like own these things?
Yeah, of course.
What? Just to sit there and like pester the damn thing through the...
No. People who are into tarantulas are very passionate about tarantulas, and they try not to stress them. So it's more about it's like, why do you dive with sharks? Because they're cool.
Because they make me shit my pants. I don't... And I need to get up close to get them out of my nightmares. I don't know.
But they're cool. They're interesting.
Yes. They are very cool.
You look at a tarantula and it's like, it's interesting. You don't pet it, it's never going to love you, but it's interesting to observe them. And I think it's the same reason why people have a tank full of piranha too. It's interesting to observe them. It's a way to bring something dangerous and alien from nature into your home so that you can observe it in kind of a controlled environment.
That just, tank full of piranha, I mean, that just sounds stupid. I don't know. I don't know. What do you feed a tarantula?
Crickets. They just mostly eat crickets or cockroaches. Some people who are really into tarantulas also raise cockroaches, so they don't have to buy them anymore.
I mean, can't you just like leave some food out?
Cockroaches are actually really easy to raise, and people who are raising cockroaches don't raise American cockroaches. They raise cockroaches from other countries, so they can't climb up the sides of their enclosures and whatnot. They tend to be very nutritious for the tarantulas.
So as a kid, you said that by age 9 you knew you wanted to be an author?
Yes. So basically, I was given a creative writing project in 3rd grade where we were given a notebook, and it was really, looking back in hindsight as an adult, that was like my teacher's break time, because he could just have us write a stream of consciousness in our notebooks and correct stuff and get caught up. But I saw it as this really interesting new thing for me because I'd never been asked to write anything on my own before. So I wrote this really terrible story about a boy trading cheeseburgers to aliens for alien technology, and it was like total wish fulfillment as an 8-year-old. But I read it to my grandmother, and she let me read it to her, the whole agonizing thing, and I really enjoyed it. So I started paying more attention to writing, and I started trying to write my own stuff, and I got more into literature. I think I read my first Terry Brooks book when I was 7 or 8 years old. The Elfstones of Shannara was actually my very first adult fantasy book I ever read.
Oh yeah,
and I wrote some books. I wrote some children's books when I was in junior high. When I was 11 years old, I wrote Donnie the Dragon, for instance, and I wrote some books, and I sucked at it. I knew I sucked at it, but at the same time, after I had created a story, I really loved that feeling. And to this day, I don't particularly like writing itself, but having the story in my hands that I wrote is a feeling I'll probably chase for the rest of my life.
Interesting. So you don't like the actual act of the writing?
No, it's always been work for me. I'm not I am not as talented as some of my peers, and it's not as natural for me. I don't enjoy it, and I never will. But that's one of the reasons why I took 20 years to polish my craft and read thousands of books with the idea in mind that I wanted to be a writer. I mean, I have to have some talent. I have to admit that I have some talent because I'm obviously a full-time author. But I'm also I try to be somewhat self-aware, and I know that for me, I'm kind of an example that if somebody really wants it a lot and works hard at it, they can achieve it as long as they have that kernel of talent.
You seem to have been working at it for quite some time, Blaise. So how was it that turned into Delvers 1?
That's actually a little bit of a story in itself. I finally decided that I was going to start trying to be a professional writer, or at least I was going to try my hand at writing commercially. I was inspired by people like Drew Hayes and like Taryn Matheru, um, who were writing online. And I was like, wow, this is something I could do. For me, somehow seeing people posting web serials online made it much more approachable for me because it didn't have kind of the hidden smoke and mirrors of traditional publishing or the huge learning curve of being an indie. And posting chapters online was something I felt like I could do. So I did. And I started with a story that I had been wanting to tell forever, but I bit off more than I could chew. And about 40,000 words in, I was like, nobody's reading this. It's not very good. I read it myself and I'm like, this needs a lot of work. Um, I wasn't getting a lot of support from anybody I knew, and I was really frustrated. So I did a writing exercise where I wrote just the first few chapters of some random stories that came to me. And Delvers was pretty fun. So I posted on Wattpad, and just one or two people responded and said that they liked it. And that was enough encouragement for me to really start writing that story, and I finished it.
And did that end up on the Royal Road?
Yes, it did. So the way I kind of started with Delvers is I first started posting at Wattpad, which is really not friendly to like male literature or even traditional fantasy. So I took my story from there. I started my own website and I was posting in other places on the internet with my own website. And another author told me that I should post on Royal Road because I'd get more exposure there. And I tried it out and it did help.
And for those that might not know, Royal Road is a website where you can go and read for free. People post chapters and whatnot. And there's also another site that somebody else is doing, correct?
Correct. And that's Book Brawl. In fact, some folks I know are heavily involved in trying to bring that to kind of the greater indie writing community. But Book Brawl is very similar to Royal Road in that it's a free site where people can post stories. The difference is that at Book Brawl, there is a way for everybody to promote a little bit easier, which will be kind of the brawl function. And that is where two stories will go head to head on the site and readers can vote on which one they prefer. And that's the Brawl. But that's a way for readers to find new stories and also for writers to get their work out there, hopefully.
I love the artwork on there. It's really cool. Go check it out, bookbrawl.com. Getting back to your writing, though, it's amazing to me that you hate it and you sit down and you knock it out. I mean, it takes serious discipline to do that. I mean, you strike me as a disciplined guy to begin with. Do you have a discipline in your writing structure, in your process?
I'm not as disciplined as other writers who have like a certain number of words that they write per day. My discipline comes from extreme guilt and self-flagellation. So at the end of the day, if I haven't produced what I feel is a decent amount of work, I still nose to the ground. I will just pick up the pace and continue working, and it's really chaotic, but it works for me.
That takes a lot of self-flagellation, I would imagine. I mean, I imagine you actually have some good tools to do that with too.
I work probably 19 hours a day on average because I'm running multiple Facebook groups. I'm building a website. I'm writing 3 stories right now. I have, multiple author groups that I participate in. There's a lot going on. I have a lot of irons in the fire, and it takes time. And there really is. In fact, I was telling a colleague the other day, the only way to be part of the community is to be part of the community, and that requires an investiture of time.
And speaking of that, I mean, you do run quite a bit of groups that are very prolific in posts specifically related to gaming books. There's Game Lit Society. There's Lit RPG Fun and Games. Am I getting that one right?
It's lit RPG, fun and game lit.
Fun and game lit. Man, that is a mouthful. Game Lit Society has almost 4,000 members now. Is that true?
Actually, over 4,000 members. I think we're sitting about 4,025 today.
Wow. And I mean, I've been in there for probably a year and 3 months or so, and it's very welcoming. I mean, everybody is just hands down one of the best run groups I think I've ever been in. So
Well, thank you.
kudos to you.
Thank you. We really, that's not just me, that's my moderators and admins as well. We really try to foster kind of a sense of community there, as well as a sense of fairness and transparency. I think we've been doing a pretty good job so far. So I'm not going to break my arm patting myself on the back, but I'll do it.
You got to pat yourself on the chainmail there. So getting back to the writing and this book, one of my favorites, The Secrets of the Old Ones. This is a very different world than Ludus and your Delvers series. It's in fact, it's a completely different world, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That's tough because world building for one series is tough enough, but to do it for two, I imagine that's really a kick in the ass.
Sure. Writing is hard, but I do it for a living, right? So
Well,
I wanted to do something different with Secret of the Old Ones. And the way that actually happened is an interesting story. So I was on Royal Road, and there was a small contest between my group and another group. At the time, I had the Lit RPG Society on Royal Road. This was obviously before we transitioned to GameLit, but I had my own group on Royal Road. It was a few of the more prolific writers on the site, and we were challenged by another group. So I took part in this challenge where we are both given a prompt. Myself and a writer from the other group were given a prompt, which was a picture. We were told to write a short story about it. So I wrote a short story. I won. I liked it enough that I turned that into the first chapter of Secret of the Old Ones.
I didn't know that. That's a good little tidbit. So was that actually before the Delvers stuff?
Yes, that was before Delvers LLC went live.
How would you describe the world?
I would describe Secret of the Old Ones as hard lit RPG or hard RPG game lit in a virtual reality environment. It's deep dive VR.
So the Secret of the Old Ones is basically would you call it a Victorian steampunk?
Yeah, I would say it's a Victorian steampunk Lovecraftian lit RPG adventure.
Was that definitely an inspiration for you, the whole Lovecraft world?
Yes, so that was always going to be part of the story. Even when I first wrote that first short story, it was where a lot of the kind of the darkness came from. One of the things I like about Lovecraft so much and the original stories is because there is this like palpable sense of adventure amidst all the horror. And that is something I've always tried to bring about in my own writing. And I thought, why not just learn directly from the master? So that's why I started using some of that Lovecraftian mythos. Now, of course, that required at least a good solid week of research into the various trademarks for all of the old Lovecraft stuff, which is ironic because Lovecraft himself actually let other authors write in his universe on the regular. So it's very interesting that modern companies today are trademarking elements of the Lovecraftian mythos.
You've definitely adapted it to your own world because I didn't pick up on it really.
Well, thank you. I also had to change some of the names. Well, I didn't have to, but I decided to change some of the names. So I wanted it to be more subtle. I wanted fans of Lovecraftian mythos to be like, "Oh, that's what he's talking about. Like this is, this is Innsmouth." I didn't want it to be in your face, like buy my book because I put Lovecraft somewhere. That wasn't the goal.
One of the influences that I really love that comes in is the trees, the lore of trees. And I noticed in your book, even though it's more sci-fi, that there is the whole world tree montage motif in there. Was that purposeful?
Yes, that was on purpose. So basically, Secret of the Old Ones, the game itself is very chaotic. It's very dark. There are a lot of bad things going on in this game world that my main character Trent is spending his time in. But trees are kind of the antithesis of that. Trees are immutable. Trees are constant. Trees symbolize life. So Trent is navigating this game world with so many motifs that dwell among, horror and darkness and death. Meanwhile, you have this beautiful landscape that he goes to in chapter 1 and all these trees, and I think it just serves as a really interesting counterpoint to that. At least I thought so when I was writing, but I'm a goofy writer, so what do I know?
As now that I know that it's your debut, I mean, it really was. You didn't publish it first, but it was the first thing that you wrote and started putting online. And knowing that now, I'm even more baffled by the story because it's just so good.
Thank you.
Not that Delvers isn't good. Delvers is great. I love fantasy, but this is my favorite Blaise Corvin book. I wasn't a huge Lovecraftian person growing up, but I love the darkness of the world that Lovecraft creates, and I watch a lot of TV shows with dark material and dark feeling, and this definitely was a good blend of that. It wasn't too much. It wasn't horror. It wasn't over the top with any of that stuff.
One of the
So
interesting things about Lovecraft is, for me anyway, is the idea that there are these intelligences, these are these things that are so horrific that even looking at them will cause us to lose our sanity. These are not things we can fight against. This isn't something Xena can ninja kick. This is something that is so fundamentally alien and powerful that we are specks of dust compared to that. I wanted to bring that sense of tininess, of that sense of horror into the story, but I wanted to give the character tools to fight back against it, and I feel like I was successful in doing so.
you have some really unique spells in there. Like lore recall. I mean, who comes up with that? Lore recall. I mean, that is a crazy spell. How do you come up with your spells?
So it's kind of a combination of things. For me, before I became a writer, I consumed so much media. It was absolutely insane. Anything from stories to movies to, manga, comics, everything. I'm fairly familiar, at least at a low level basis, with most stuff out there on the market. Then there's the idea of characters crafting their own stuff. Now this is almost an homage back to Morrowind, the game, for me, because I loved crafting my own spells. I loved, you know, tweaking the system and min maxing. And Trent is that same sort of person. Now, granted, he's a jerk and he's not the most likable person in the world, but he is a serious gamer. And that's why he's able to come up with these interesting spells and these new ways of taking his powers that the game gave him and turning it into something unique for his use.
I love Morrowind myself. I played the heck out of that thing, and I can see the influence now, definitely in the spell creation. And that is a very unique thing. The classes are also unique, right?
Yes. So I wanted to create, and I haven't really gotten into this. So some of what I say is going to be a little bit vague because I don't want to give away spoilers. But Secret of the Old Ones is kind of a short, punchy book, and all the books in the series are going to be like that. But it is legitimate, crunchy RPG gamelet. And because of that, I created this extremely large system on the back end, which I think any successful uh, RPG game writer does, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And readers pick up on that really quick. So, like, for instance, Trent is an occultist. And in the occultist class, I will give this to people. So, in the occultist class, there are 3 subclasses of that: Explorer, Ritualist, and Warlock. So, Trent went with Explorer. Now, there are 2 more subclasses off of Explorer, which is Scholar and Treasure Hunter. And I'm going to leave it to other people, or I'm going to leave it to readers to find out which one Trent eventually chooses when he hits his hero class.
Treasure hunter. That sounds very piratey.
Yes. So I kind of went with the idea, and a lot of game developers do this as well. So it's nothing new. It's something readers might actually identify with or recognize, which is you have this kind of this class tree, and gamers or readers in this case can go one way or the other, and one is kind of more like a paragon noble class, and the other side is more dark and sinister or renegade. And I like that idea, especially in Secret of the Old Ones, which is this massive sandbox VR game. There will be players that want to play, heroes and paragons of virtue. And then there's going to be people like Trent who just want to get really cool gear and gain power for himself.
Kind of like being a barbarian or being a paladin or something.
Something like that, yeah. With the paladin example, it's more like there's a paladin and then a dark paladin, or like a night reaver. Like one worships the light gods and heals, and the other worship the dark gods and sacrifice people to their god for power.
It's definitely a cool mix in here with the Lovecraftian darkness of it and the trees bringing up the lightness of being in it, and these Morrowind in the background with the spell creation and this cool crafting. You said that one of your favorite classes is something we haven't seen, which is a priest. Is that something that's going to figure into this story?
Oh yeah. So in Secret of the Old Ones 2, the priest class is going to be front and center. And I'm really excited about that because Trent is going to meet kind of a new foil.
Dark?
Kind of. I guess a really good example, and something that folks watching this might understand if I give this as an example, is the crazy priest in the Helsing series. Priests aren't always nice people.
When I first started reading Gamelit, the path, the chosen one path, you got to start out at level 1, go do this and work this, killing these hedgehogs for 2 days, and then you're level 2. That stuff gets old really fast. And the thing that I love about your books, especially Secret of the Old Ones, because it takes a different twist altogether, is that you don't get put down that path. They are completely able to choose. That's definitely true in Delvers because it's a portal fantasy, which makes sense. But where your hardcore gamelit in Secret of the Old Ones, you would expect a little bit more of that. But there's so much variance available to Trent.
Yeah, I will never write a book where the main character or any of the characters just randomly get handed power or influence or privilege for no reason. And I'm not knocking people that like those types of stories. I have enjoyed those types of stories as well. Ultimately, tropes aren't inherently bad. Tropes, when executed properly, are really fun. And especially since I've been involved in the literature community as kind of a provider or a professional, I've also noticed that some of the people who scream the loudest about certain things are not indicative of the larger population of readers too. And I'll just kind of leave it at that.
That's definitely true. Gamelit readers are definitely more discerning, and I think the books need to be at a certain level in order to satisfy that craving. And we've seen it time and time again that certain people come in just to make money, and they certainly don't survive, or not for long, even if they're good writers, because they just are not in the mindset. They are not, as you said earlier about something else, if you haven't lived it, if you haven't been in fear for your life, you can't write about being in fear for your life.
Well, part of it is Gamelit's a culture. Gamelit isn't just a style of literature, it's also part of a culture, right? And that's because, and so people who want to write in it who are from outside are going to inherently have a difficulty, or they're going to inherently have difficulty doing so because of that cultural aspect. Writing a fantasy story with some stats doesn't make it Gamelit. And not everybody understands that at first, and that they might try and fail, or maybe they're actually gamers and they're going to really succeed. I don't know. We'll see. Whenever I see a new writer, I'm like cautiously hopeful because I'm a true fan of the genre. I want to have books to read. When I eventually retire, I want to have a stack of books to go through. And when we talk about that cultural aspect, I think it's real in a way that maybe people who are outside the culture don't understand. And what I mean by that is maybe best illustrated by an example. If somebody wants to write about the experiences of a person in a war-torn country, somebody who has actually experienced that life is going to be best suited to write the novel. Now, there is research, and there are some writers who can do research and do a good job of writing that sort of story. But there's two things that work in their favor. First of all, they are doing the research. And second of all, most people in the world are not survivors of a war-torn country. Meanwhile, you have millions and millions and millions of gamers who do understand what it's like, and those are your customers. You are selling the story of somebody's life to the person who's lived it. So if there isn't some sort of authenticity there, it may be rejected. There's also the fact that people who are writing for a quick buck are generally not the sort of writers that are going to spend a few weeks or even a few months or years doing research. They're trying to make a quick buck. So all these things kind of lumped together make it very difficult for people to write gamelit who are outside the community. Now, I've seen it happen. It's possible, but it's not probable.
The other thing that I think that we share in common is a love of castles. You said that if you won a lottery, the craziest thing you would buy is a castle. I happen to agree with that. I also find your second answer to that question is one of the best answers I've ever heard, which is if a genie could grant you one wish, what would it be? And that's a tax-free castle. What's better than a castle? A tax-free castle. If I'm a castle nut, I travel the world for work, and I've been to a lot of castles. And that would be my ideal place to write. What about you?
Either that or a sailboat. My two, if I just if a bag of money fell out of the sky right now, I'd probably either build or buy a castle in the United States with a cannon on top, because why not? Or a trebuchet or something like the something rad that I can go up on a lunch break and try to hit some watermelons at 500 meters, because why not? And I'd also get myself a really nice sailboat, and I'd probably take a few months off of the year just to go visit people around the world, or even just sail on my sailboat, because the idea of riding under the open stars on the ocean just really appeals to me. I think that'd be really fun. Now, whether I'd want to go through the storms and all the other bullshit to get to that space, I'm not sure, but I think I probably would, at least for once or twice.
So you'd write on the sailboat, and then you could edit in the castle.
Yes, great minds.
As we talked about earlier, Blaise, we're both huge Tolkien fans. The Hobbit was one of your favorite books, correct?
Correct.
And so I posed a couple questions to you, and I'm a little bit concerned about your answers. I said,
the battle of the RRs, Tolkien or Martin?
And you picked Martin. Why? Why did you pick George R.R. Martin?
Honestly, I think there are issues. Only a writer could be this arrogant, right? I think both of them have issues with their writing. For me, The Hobbit is one of the greatest adventure stories ever written, especially that is approachable by children and young adults. I've always loved that story. However, Lord of the Rings for me is a little overrated. I still enjoy it. It's got a lot of, it's the OG, but in compared to some literature today, compared to the stuff Brandon Sanderson is writing, I just don't think it holds up. Now, with George R.R. Martin, I really honestly believe that a lot of his writing process or motivation is just to make readers groan. And that's fine at first. That's fine at first. But after a while, it actually becomes a little bit predictable. If there is a sympathetic character that you're starting to like, you can figure that they're probably going to die within another book. Now, the exception to that, of course, was Jon Snow. I kind of knew from the beginning that he was going to be one of the main characters per se. But, George R.R. Martin got around that technically because Jon Snow sort of died. I don't feel bad about these spoilers, because by this point, somebody should have watched the show or read the books.
Yes.
So, that's the technicality that he got out of with Jon Snow.
Well, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. I think it's probably the best television show ever produced. The production value on that thing is off the chain. But I still am a Lord of the Rings guy. And so, all right, I'll let you slide on that. I'll let you slide.
I don't dislike either one. I'm not knocking either one. I just there are other stories out there that for me I think are just a little bit better, a little bit the whole is greater than the sum of their parts. I really think Brandon Sanderson is one of the most talented writers of our age, and I would say that his not so much the Mistborn series, because the Mistborn series started to drag for me a little bit. I'm still a huge fan, but you can see just the huge evolution in his craft with the new stuff he's putting out. Even the short stories for me are immensely immersive and they're just fantastic. So Sanderson is who I want to be when I grow up.
And with a smattering of the George RRs. And,
yes, smattering of the RRs and some Joe Abercrombie maybe thrown in there, because why not?
There you go. All right. So the second thing I have to call you on, it kind of tags into that, is that I gave you
the Battle of the Axes.
Being, you're a blade guy. I actually prefer axes myself, but Vikings and dwarves, and you went with Vikings. How can you do that and call yourself a medieval token guy?
Fantasy dwarves haven't really existed. That's one of the big reasons why. I can if I buy old Viking stuff. I mean, you can hold it in your hands. I've actually held antique and historical Viking artifacts, and dwarven stuff depends on what IP you're getting into. So I mean, what dwarves are we talking? Are we talking Dragon Age dwarves where their stuff sucks? Are we talking Tolkien dwarves where they have this master crafted stuff that's basically still a steel axe? I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking Warhammer dwarves where their best stuff is enhanced with rune magic? It depends on the IP. So if you had qualified that statement, maybe I would have answered differently.
All right. I'll give it to you. I'll give you that one too. All right. I'm going to throw one at you that I didn't ask you.
Okay.
So,
Battle of the Helmets. On the one side, you have the Stormtrooper, and on the other side, you have Vader. Which the better helmet?
Vader's. That's from the same universe. On top of that, Vader is a Sith Lord, so you'd think he'd have better gear than the Mooks, right? Not only that, the Mooks were killed by Ewoks with like sticks on or rocks on a stick, so their helmets kind of suck.
I don't know. I love those Stormtrooper helmets.
They don't really protect you though, and they limit your field of view.
Yeah, but they look badass.
So does my T-shirt, but I wouldn't try to go to war with it.
Oh, you're killing me here. All right. Well, Blaise, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, man. And I love this book. You guys need to read this book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And man, I'm looking forward to the second one. When is that?
I'm not entirely sure. So it's probably going to be at the end of this year or early next year, about the same time frame as Delvers 4, because I'm working on 3 different things right now. One is the first song series, which is going to have a Bard MC. Another is Nora Hazard 2, the second in the Nora Hazard series, which is called Competitive Advantage, and also a secret series that everybody will find out about it when it launches.
Oh, a secret series.
Mm-hmm.
Man, no breaking news that you want to release on GameReads?
If everybody is keeping up with me on my fan group or on Gamelit Society, they should be pretty well kept abreast of all my new projects. But yeah, by the end of this year, I'm going to have at least 4, maybe even 5 new series. And my production my production level has gone up quite a bit now that I've been full time. So by mid next year, I'll probably have at least 10 books out.
4 or 5 series, that's a lot, man. Well, I'm looking forward to all of them. And
Thank you.
definitely looking forward to the sequel to this book. Again, Secrets of the Old Ones. Go pick it up. It's a quick read. I mean, I'm a fan of the quick reads. I know people prefer in fantasy, they prefer the 200 million word book that you could basically drop on somebody and kill them with. But this thing is awesome for it. The amount of good shit that you pack into this book is incredible. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for watching GameReads. Check out our other great interviews on YouTube and GameReads.net. Connect and chat with other fans on our GameReads Facebook page and YouTube channel, and support us on Patreon.com. Please subscribe now to our YouTube channel or iTunes podcast and never miss an episode. Cheers to legendary gear.